Hi, everybody. It's Allie. Happy Monday. It is Monday, November. I don't even know the date today. November 4th. I honestly can't even believe it's November of this year. Last Thursday or whenever it was Halloween, and I was thinking back. I just remember last year's Halloween like it was yesterday, and I have no comprehension of how a year has gone by. So we are into November. But also kind of cool for the Facebook group because that means we've been going for a few months now, and I love where it has gone, everything that's going on. I have really enjoyed doing these live, so I'm happy to be back here at our usual day and time, Mondays, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I almost said Pacific Central. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I hope you guys all had a great weekend, and we'll get kind of right into it. Seems like there was something I was going to tell you. Oh, I know what it was. So if you'll notice, you probably already noticed that I have put a couple, let's see, I think maybe 3 different turnkey properties for sale on the group in the discussion. Really, mostly, I mean, they are available turnkeys if you are shopping around for turnkeys and are interested. These are all turnkeys from providers that I know and personally trust. I seem to be caught in a cord here. So these are available properties, but more than just showing you, I was really caught in a cord there. More than just showing you available properties for sale, I love some of the discussions that have come up from the properties. Like, do you guys like the markets? Do you not like the markets? Pros and cons. What do you like about these properties? What do you not? And I think it's prompted some really amazing turnkey discussions. So I want to keep those going, but I do want to give a little caveat that we've been updating Hipster's website lately, and we actually switched from posting individual properties in more of kind of like a blog format. We actually have a running live inventory of properties for sale on the site. So if you haven't actually seen it, I don't even know what the specific, I think it's, let's see, we're going to find out. Hipsterinvestments.com. I can't even, .com/turnkey. Yeah, so, okay. www, does anyone even say that anymore? Hipsterinvestments.com/turnkey-properties-for-sale. So, or if you just go to Hipster's main page, hipsterinvestments.com, on the lower right, you'll see, do you want to see available inventory for sale? So that is the link to our new live running inventory, which is kind of an exciting thing, mostly because I'm not very techie and good at this stuff. But number 2, these are actual properties for sale. They are updating live, maybe not every single day, but at least weekly. They are updating live. Not a guarantee that they are available. If you click on a property, it'll say the current status, which is either for sale or currently pending. That can change on a whim and it not get updated perfectly regularly. But this is it's an exciting thing to be able to follow and to really kind of see the different properties. They are not currently organized by market, but you can kind of scroll through, and I mean, hey, technology is kind of a layer by layer thing. So the reason I'm talking about this is because this format on the website has just changed, I haven't completely mastered how to get them to show up perfectly on our group. So the last one I posted, I believe on Thursday, the image of the property, I think, did not show up. Like in Facebook when you put a link and then like it gives you a preview of the page, it kind of came up blank, and then I think was it El Razone or somebody, was it him? I can't remember. Reposted the link too, but then it showed a picture of our Turnkey Rental Properties 101 ebook, which we sell. Cool if you want to buy the ebook, but not very helpful if you're wanting to see properties. So bear with us on the property thing. Once I get all of these logistics settled, I'll make it a pretty regular thing that these things come out. I've been pretty good about getting them out on Thursdays, but just know that we're having a little technical side of how to get these things to you guys. But if at any time you want to check out properties or you want to ask questions about markets or whatever, just go to Hipster's website. You can see the inventory there, or you can message me directly. But we are trying to work on that. I was actually just kind of scrolling through what properties we do have for sale right now. There's actually some pretty cool ones, and the cap rates, I think the one I posted on Thursday that the image did not show up, maybe I'll try and, yeah, I'll have to kind of dig into it, but it's kind of 8.45% cap rate, and this is in Kansas City. And on the turnkey front, with where we are in prices, like, it's a pretty rad cap rate. So there's an 8.32 right next to it, and these purchase prices are in the low 80s. So that's kind of awesome. And they're actually not terrible looking properties. What else do we have in here? Anything? We do not currently have any of the Burr model, Burr plus turnkey model properties on here. Not really for any particular reason other than I'm just not that ahead of the technology game, and we're trying to do what we can when we can. So know that if you are interested in those, shoot me a message and I can send that inventory to you separately. So yeah, okay, I'll stop scrolling through here. Even I like property shopping still, even though I've been doing it for years. And on here too, we do, like I said, we have the Turnkey Rental Properties 101 ebook. I'm actually thinking of maybe offering that to you guys at some like super crazy discount, or I think it was just maybe the last Facebook Live that it kind of hit me that I've never really talked much about that ebook to you guys. Okay. So let's see what we want to do today. So I actually had as a lot of you guys know, I used to be a pretty regular author on BiggerPockets, and that's really kind of how this whole thing blew up in a good way as far as turnkeys. When I started writing for BiggerPockets, it was in 2012, I think, and the website was a very different website at that time. There weren't as many people on it. It was really fun because it was kind of like everyone knew me, and I could, it was a lot more intimate's the wrong word, just because it sounds weird, but now it's become such a big website. There's just so many people talking, and there's just resources galore, which is a good thing, but it's taken some of the personality or personable, the ability to be more personable. I'm still having cord problems here. There we go. But regardless, because I was on there for so long, I still talk to people on there all the time. And I had somebody who had sent me over a slew of turnkey questions. And I thought that these questions, I would start with you guys, unless you have something different, of just kind of go through his questions, because they are fantastic questions, and I thought it'd be a good start for today. So the first one was, he said, I want to know what the purchasing process is like and what to expect when owning turnkeys. And he also said, and do you suggest investing with only one turnkey provider or more than one? I think it was the last Facebook Live that I hit that pretty thick, but I'll hit it again in summary. But starting with the first thing is he was basically asking, what's the purchasing process like for a turnkey, which I think is great. And I actually don't think we have covered it at any point, which seems maybe kind of obvious that that would have been a good one to cover because it matters. So, and the cool thing about turnkeys is, in my experience, once you've been through the buying process once, you really it. It's basically the same thing every time. This kind of goes back to a conversation we had before about why it's so hard to find turnkey reviews online, because I'm telling you, once people go through the process once and they understand it once, they keep doing it, and they're not really online chatting about it because they don't need more information. So here's your basic process. Let's say you go to Hipster's website, to this fancy new inventory thing we have, and you're like, hey, I think I want this property. In the case of Hipster specifically, I'll put you directly in touch with the people who are really going to actually carry this out for you. But the gist of what's going to happen is, let's say you're like, yep, I want that property for sure. And to clarify, at this point in the equation, you don't necessarily need to have you're not going to have all the due diligence done at this point. So you don't, if you have questions about the property or the specific address or the neighborhood or property, all those questions that you have, completely fine. They're not necessarily, they don't need to be answered right this second at this point when you decide to build. There's a honking situation going outside that's incredibly distracting. I was pretending it's not happening for a while, but it totally got my squirrel. So you find a property, whether it's online or maybe you even go meet the turnkey provider, whatever. So you find a property, like you don't have all the information that you need to feel certain about your property. That's completely fine. But you will fill out a reservation form and we'll provide that to you. And what that's going to do is that's going to trigger the seller to go ahead and do up the contract, the sales contract for you. So at the time you get the sales contract from them, you of course can review it. And you are going to go over that. You're going to sign that. And with the sales contract, they're going to give you instructions on how to send in your $5,000 earnest money. This money is not a fee. This is not in addition to the purchase price. This eventually goes towards your purchase price, but this is basically like a holding kind of thing. So that money goes into escrow. It doesn't go to the turnkey provider. But they'll send you those wiring instructions it's saying that you're a serious buyer and you're planning to pursue this. So at that time, you sign the sales contract, you send in your $5,000 earnest money, and in that contract, and you'll be in communication with the seller the whole time. You don't have to know everything about the buying process, because I really hope you guys can't hear the honking, because I guess it's a car alarm, but I also hope it doesn't go on for the next hour that we're talking either. But I really hope you guys can't hear it. So you send the sales contract. Hi Dean, thanks for joining. You send in the sales contract. You send in your earnest money. You're going to be in communication with the seller the whole time. Like, they're not going to just like assume you know how to do all these things. Hi Margot. We're talking about a question was asked of like, what's the purchasing process for a turnkey? Like you want to buy a turnkey property. How do you do that? And so I was saying, like, if you go on our Hipster's website or whoever, you find a property you like, you identify it, you let us know, we'll send you a reservation form so it holds it. And at that point, we'll put you in touch with the seller directly. They will send you over a sales contract and instructions for sending your $5,000 earnest money, which is held in escrow. It goes towards the purchase price of the house, but it's it's a good faith gesture to say, yes, I'm actually serious about wanting this property. At that point, your due diligence period and your whole buying period starts. And in the contract, there's going to be a defined due diligence period. It's usually like 14 days or something. And all of the timelines on this change a little bit if you're financing versus paying cash. If you're paying cash, you're looking at a grand total of maybe 2 weeks from sales contract to close, because all you really have to do is get the property inspection and any other little due diligence items that you want to do. Depending on how the property inspection comes back, the sellers, however much time it takes to do that stuff. Typically, the process is longer, like 30 to 45 days if you're doing financing, because the lender has to do all their stuff. And in those cases, the seller's going to be in touch with you and the lender's going to be in touch with you. If at any point either of those people need something from you, they're going to let you know, especially the lenders. And quite frankly, you're going to at some point wish the lenders would stop asking for things, because it just gets exhausting. But during this time, the biggest thing going on is your due diligence. The biggest item of that is your property inspection. And I won't go into full due diligence items because I'll kind of make that a separate question and answer type of thing. But this is when you're verifying everything you don't know. You're getting the property inspection, you're verifying the condition of it, you're getting the seller to fix any things that are left, you're talking to the property managers, you're checking out the tenant leases, you're getting whatever information you want on the neighborhoods, you are running comps, getting your numbers, you're doing all these things to basically verify that you're getting what has been advertised to you. So that's all happening in the midst of it. And mostly you're just kind of waiting on at that point, you're kind of waiting on your lender to finish their stuff, because they're really the longest part of the equation. Hi, Alonzo. Thanks for joining. And then the lender is going to tell you, like, hey, we'll be ready to close whatever day. They'll kind of talk you through it all. They're probably going to be the ones to trigger you to get like property insurance, get everything set up. You're going to have a lot of guidance for this whole thing. And if at any point, like if I'm helping you buy one of these things or whatever, you can always reach out. But between the lender and the turnkey provider, you're never going to need to give them something and them not mention it and you not give it to them. Like it's going to be an open communication thing. So and then when everything is done and settled, you close on the property. And So his question was actually two-part. It was, what's the purchasing process like, and what to expect when owning turnkeys. So I've said this before, but turnkey is a method of buying. It's not a method of owning. Once you close on that property, you own a rental property just like any other rental property. There's nothing at that point special about turnkeys over owning a rental property, except, and this is kind of unofficial, in for sure within the first year, but maybe even after that, let's say something weird goes on with the property, like maybe it's a weird repair, or somebody recently was in the group was talking about, oh no, this was actually a separate message too. She said she actually bought a property from Roofstock, and it turns out, we're kind of in talks about it now, it turns out it was an as-is property, which is beyond me why a turnkey is sold as is, but the HVAC unit came back with like a $3,000 repair needed, and it specifically said because it was installed wrong. So the one unofficial advantage I think that turnkeys, when you buy from a turnkey provider or turnkey something or another, is, especially within the first year, but maybe even after that, go to them first. If something like that happens, they are my first stop to say, yo, like, an HVAC installed improperly, you were supposed to sell me a turnkey property. Like, and if you buy any other rental property, you don't really have that option to go back to the seller. Like, once it's sold, and you don't really have repercussions. And in some cases with the turnkey providers, you don't technically have like, a lot of them will offer an out of scope. Yeah, out of scope. Let's see. Why am I scope of work warranty? Out of scope? I don't even know where I got that. It's one of those weeks. A scope of work warranty where for 60 or 90 days or a year, they're going to guarantee their rehab. So if anything weird happens, you just call them up and say, hey, this thing happened. It's on you, dude. So they might actually have legal not standing, but like you may have legal, options with them that they have to fix that. But even if it's not a scope of warranty type of thing, or if you're out of the scope of warranty or whatever, I still make them my first call before I do anything, because if they're a really good turnkey provider or they're nice or whatever, like if it's legitimately kind of something they should have been responsible for, they may help you. Or I've seen cases where maybe it's really not on them, but they can get you discounted work, through their handyman or whatever. Like, it's pretty rare that I've not seen a turnkey provider offered to help in some way. Some cases, a few years down the road, somebody for some reason wanted to sell their turnkey property, and the turnkey provider bought it back from them. I mean, that's not a guarantee by any means, and it's not for the same price they paid, but there's different options. And even if they don't want to buy it back, they may have a circle of buyers who would want to buy it. So yeah, like I said, once you own a turnkey rental property, it's just like owning any other rental property, except for this potential advantage of having the turnkey provider as a go-to should something weird happen. So as far as owning turnkeys, which is the same as owning rental properties, as far as expectations, what does that look like? One thing kind of specific to turnkeys, but not only turnkeys, is the property management standpoint. Because if you buy a rental property right down the road and you're landlording, that's a very different mindset, kind of task set than having a property manager. So when you own a turnkey, I think your ultimate job as an investor at that point is to manage the manager. Because as long as the property manager should be dealing with everything: tenants, toilets, insurance claims if some kind of damage happens, turnovers. There's really no little task that you should be worrying about yourself. So in that case, your job is to manage the manager. So you're like a people manager versus a toilets manager. And so if your property manager is performing legit, like good performance, you're probably fine, barring any freak of nature, who knows what, which occasionally happens, but not that often. If your property management is not doing their job well, your investment is at risk. So, excuse me, even the thought of property managers gives me the coughs. Your job is to just make sure the property manager is doing their job. That's not a door opening to micromanage them. Like, my policy is like, I don't want to say no news is good news, because that's certainly not always the case. Like, you can have a bad manager and everything's going wrong and you never hear from them and you have no idea until it's too late and it's very expensive. So that's not it. But it's kind of like if you're getting paid every month, if they communicate as easily as you need them to, again, please don't micromanage them. Like, that's exhausting. then everything's fine. But if for some reason maybe there's a lot of repairs happening that they aren't communicating to you about, if they're not communicating, if you're not getting paid well, like if there's just weird things going on, like you need to step in and figure out what the problem is. Is it the management, or is it something else? Maybe it is some kind of freak of nature thing. So owning a rental property at that point that you own it, whether you're landlording it yourself or using property management, but in the case of turnkeys, you're probably using property management, it's all about the management. That's it. Like, you have to make sure that that rental property is being managed appropriately. Other than that, that sounds like a very big job. Other than that, it's totally passive income. Again, when things are going right, my turnkeys, I own several, and I spend, when all's going right, less than not even an hour a year. There's really nothing, maybe we touch base about a repair, I give an approval or something, but when things are going bad, in my case with the turnkeys, it's usually either extensive repairs from we just had an expensive repair on a bad turnover. These tenants were terrible. It was kind of on me for not making a move faster on it. We knew they were bad, and I had it in my head that, how much damage could they do? Well, it turns out tenants can actually do a lot of damage. So I should have stepped in faster in communication with the property managers and whatever. But so that is what is the purchasing process like, and what to expect when owning turnkeys. I hope that's helpful. And if at any point you have questions about any of that, and like I said, buying the turnkey, once you go through the process once, it's going to, you can do it in your sleep. It's just that first time is a little intimidating, just because you don't know what to expect, what to look for, how to know if something's on par or not on par or whatever. But when you have people involved in the equation, they're going to communicate with you. They'll let you know if they need anything. Hi, Carmen. Yeah, so just know that, and this isn't always true. If you go completely rogue and you buy a turnkey from a company all by yourself, and there's not really anyone on your side to help you know what you don't know, you could set yourself up to be doing a little riskier. But that's why people like me exist. I highly recommend working with the turnkey marketing companies, either Hipster, like my company, or some of the other ones, because that puts more people on your side of the equation versus just you and the turnkey provider. So that way, those people, who are usually licensed real estate agents, can help guide you through that process. So you're not just wondering, is the turnkey provider telling me something legit, or are they trying to scam me? How do I know? So use your resources. That's what we're here for. That's what this group is for. You can post questions. I would actually love, I don't think I know a couple people in the group right now who are in the buying process, and we haven't heard from them. I should put a post up inviting anyone maybe who just recently went through the purchase process, which I know a couple of people have, and those who are in it right now, maybe we can prompt them to give us information about their experiences. What have the biggest challenges been? What's confusing? What do they, feel good about? All that kind of stuff. So I'll make a note of that. That'd be a really cool conversation to have. So for those of you who just joined, as you probably know, I'm a writer on BiggerPockets, and I still have a lot of people communicating with me on BiggerPockets. And I had somebody who sent a pretty long list of what I thought to be really good turnkey questions. So I've just been kind of barreling down those questions because I figure if he wants to know, you guys might want to know. For all of you guys who are on here now or just joined, if you have any turnkey questions, send them over. I would love to answer them, and I'll stop with this chain. So send over whatever you're wondering about, no matter how big or small. We'll hit it. So the second part to his question, after asking what's the purchasing process like and what to expect when owning turnkeys, he asked if I suggest investing with only one turnkey provider or more than one. I gave a really detailed answer on this one last week, I believe, on the Facebook Live, and that one would have been dated, what would that have been? So if you guys look it up, all of our old Facebook Lives are in the discussion section. Hey, Tara. So you can go back to them at any time. They're dated appropriately. So this one would have been dated November 28th, I believe. And they are also all on YouTube now. So if you want the more thorough answer to this question of, do I recommend investing with only one turnkey provider or more than one, go back to that one. But the short answer to that is, it depends on what your resources are. If you have enough to buy 2 turnkeys, for example, I recommend buying, and if you love a market or you feel really good about Turnkey Provider, sure, buy both your turnkeys from them. Like, there's no wrong answer to this. But if you are kind of wanting to feel things out, buy one from one provider in one market and buy another one from another provider in another market, and watch both the properties for 6 months or a year, see which one performs the best, see which provider you enjoy the most, which one communicates the easiest, and then when you're ready to buy more, go buy from that one. So it goes back to the diversification question. You can have no diversity with your turnkeys, or you can have all the diversity in the world and buy every single turnkey from a different provider. That's one of the benefits of the model, where you don't, it's not like if you're burring, you have to build your own team. You can't do that in 12 different markets very gracefully or efficiently. But with turnkeys, because the teams are already set, you can literally buy 12 turnkeys in 12 different markets from 12 different providers, and it's not a terrible thing. So yeah. Let's see here. So then he went on to ask, the question was, if I don't have any income or a job, do I have suggestions on finding a lender that's willing to help? Look, I'm going to be honest. Hi, Jonathan. Good to see you. I was like, I see my scroll bar moving down there. I'm going to be honest, you're not going to buy turnkeys with no money down or no job. There are options for creative financing, which, by the way, I did pin Drew's creative financing article to the top of our group. So after the group announcement thing, you should be able to click on announcements, and it's direct access to this. Oh no, it says it's not available right now. This goes into my situation of not really understanding Facebook. I will hit up Drew and figure out what's going on. But barring creative financing, that is strange. For the most part, you're going to have 20 to 25% down with conventional financing. So if you have no money or no job, first of all, you're not going to qualify for conventional financing. So and if you don't qualify for financing, you're going to be looking at having to pay cash for the property. So if you do qualify for conventional financing, assume minimum 20% down, 25% down if it's multifamilies. There are creative financing options. Like, I bought some of my initial turnkeys where I did qualify for financing, and I took the mortgage and did all the work, and I had an investor partner who put up the cash. And then now we split everything 50-50. So there are different things you can do, but for the most part, however you make it happen, there's going to be a minimum of 20% down with a conventional mortgage. So, it's turnkeys are not, I don't want to say they're not as easy to get with no money down, because if you can, I don't know how you would get a BRRRR property either with no money down. I'm not really all that familiar with no money down deals outside of how I did it with an investor partner. But, it's, if you don't have a job or income, you're just not going to qualify for the mortgage. And not to completely knock you out of the boat, but you will have to figure something out, which is not undoable. That's half of the fun, we'll call it, with real estate investing, is how do you creatively finance, because it's a huge thing for everybody. Let's see. Okay, his last questions. What do you look for in a good turnkey property? What criteria does it have to meet to be worthy of a purchase? I've probably answered this in roundabout ways and maybe related to other direct questions in the past, but I think this is phrased perfectly, because I don't know if I've answered this specifically. So what do I look for in a good turnkey property? Like, what's going to make me say, yes, I want that one? So let's say you're on Hipster's website and you're scrolling through all this inventory. Notice I keep dropping the inventory thing because I'm pretty stoked that we have live inventory on the website now. So, let's say that I pull up Hipster's inventory page. So hipsterinvestments.com/turnkey properties for sale. And I'm in the market for a turnkey, and I start kind of scrolling through here. And there's quite a few different properties on here. The price ranges, let's see, I'm seeing something as low as there's an 85, there's a 75,000. It looks like up to about 120,000 maybe. They're in different markets. They have different cap rates. Oh, here's a $160,000 property. You know, where do I start? Like, how do I start figuring out which of these properties is something that I would want? I really hope the car alarm that just started going off again isn't, I hope, for you guys on here, can you hear the car alarm in the background? And if so, is it annoying? Because it seems to be a continuous thing. So let me know if you guys, hopefully I'm the only one that can hear it, but if it's actually that distracting, I don't know exactly what my move will be, but I don't want you guys to be annoyed either. So like scrolling through all these properties, how do I know, what do I look for? What do I want? How do I know which ones of these are good? Which ones are better than others? What, you know, I mean, here's the thing. I'll tell you a small secret, and it is going to potentially, it's a bad secret, and to some it might even discredit me a little bit, but that's okay because I'll take full ownership of this. So if we're looking at, let's see, oh, what am I talking about? I can leave you guys the link. Let's see. Can't hear the car alarm. Thank you, Dean. And it actually just stopped, so that's encouraging. Thank you, because if it was as annoying for you guys as it was in my ear, then I was gonna figure something out. Okay, so I just left the link to our inventory page. So as I said, what do I look for in a turnkey property? So I get to this page. I've never heard of this hipster investments place. Like, who knows who these people are? And I start scrolling through. And the secret that I'll tell you that could potentially discredit me from anyone who's worth their salt in real estate is, here's the thing. On this page, there's a lot of options very quickly. Like, if I really wanted to go through every single one of these properties, I'm probably going to be doing investigations or exploring until these properties are no longer for sale. Like that, there's a lot of properties on here. So my terrible secret is that I start with, and I never finish with this, but I start with looks. I mean, call it superficial, call it inaccurate. The most profitable property on this page might be the ugliest one. Truly, it's, you should never put emotions into a deal. You should never do any of those things. Oh, good. More people who cannot hear the car alarm. Thanks, guys. Hi, Mustafa. Thanks for joining. If you look up, see, there's that ebook preview again. I've got to figure out why that preview keeps coming up, because that's not what is supposed to come up at all. If anyone is a Facebook, if you put links in Facebook post, how does it, why is it showing the ebook picture instead of properties? And then I was saying I posted a property last Thursday and it showed nothing, and I don't know enough about Facebook and website stuff. So if anyone happens to kind of work in that arena and can tell me what I need to change somewhere for the correct previews to show up, that'd be awesome. But anyways, go to that link that looks completely irrelevant, but it is. And we're talking about how do you start shopping for a turnkey, and how do you know what's a good deal? So if I have this many turnkeys to start with, I'm going to because I need somewhere to start anyways, because I don't want to go one by one. One option might be, maybe I have a particular market in mind. So let's say that Kansas City jumps out at me. Well, that narrows the list pretty quickly. So now I can just scroll through each Kansas City property. But let's say I don't have a market preference. So what do I start with? Like I said, it could be totally discredit me, but I might start with looks. Like, what property puts a little feeling of excitement in my belly? Like, I love this one. The second row down, Villa Avenue in Indianapolis. I think it looks like a very cute little barn house type of style. So I might click on that one. But as I start scrolling through this, I'll see, okay, so that cute little barn house is $120,000, has a 7.51% cap rate. Maybe I scroll a little bit further and I like this one on Walrond Avenue. Of course, if I buy that, I'd have to figure out how to say it. That one looks intriguing. I'm like, oh wait, that one's only $82,000 and a cap rate of 8.32. So compared to my barn house looking one, like, oh, that's cheaper and with a higher cap rate. Like that, I like the looks of both of them. That might prompt me to want to look into both of those. Like, what are the major differences? One's in Kansas City, one's in Indy, but what are the major differences with that price point and the cap rate? Like I might start digging more into those. So it's really about kind of narrowing your focus a little bit. And if you want to start with looks, start with looks. I'm not going to judge you. I can't, because I probably start with looks. Like I can tell you, let's see, where was this one? At the, I think it was at, it's not the very end. There's one, I saw it a second ago. Oh, there's one in, I don't even know how many rows down this is. It's South Ewing Street, Indianapolis, Indiana. It's priced at $85,000 and it has an 8.01 cap rate. It looks smaller than a shoebox to me. Like, it just does. And if for some reason this shoebox was at maybe like a 10% cap rate or something like astronomically higher than the others, it would trigger me to look more into it. But if I compare that shoebox with the price and cap rate to the one I was just talking about that I really liked, up further for $82,000 and the 8.32% cap rate, I'm immediately going to look at the nicer looking one, the non-shoebox, because the numbers look better, the property looks better. And you know, people, I kind of always say like, dude, I'm a girl, like I'm gonna go for the cute house or the pretty house, or you know, like whatever. But more than that, that's kind of half joking or not, but it's kind of like, you know, that's what renters look for too. I don't know you know, what kind of renters want to live in this little midget shoebox. Not to say it wouldn't work. Who's to say that that's not the most profitable property on the site? I don't know. But you know, this is just kind of how my train of thought goes as I scroll through. I can tell you, of all of these, if I was a turnkey buyer and I was shopping on this website and I didn't own this website, the one that would jump out to me the fastest, and this gets down completely to personal preference, is, I don't even know how many, let's see, I don't know how many rows down. We have to come up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think it's 9 rows down. It's in St. Louis, Missouri, Talisman Court. It's priced at $159,000 and it has a cap rate of 7.6. I guarantee you, if I was going to make a short list of properties I was interested in, that would be on there, because at $160,000 price point, and it looks I mean, and pictures mean nothing without verifying it, but off the bat, it looks like a generally nicer quality property, a nicer quality neighborhood potentially. I would be very intrigued by that property for the potential for lower risk. If you guys have heard me ever talk, I'm certain there are 3 currencies: money, which we all know about, time, and sanity. And for anything we do in this life, we are trading one or more of those for whatever it is we're getting. I value my sanity way higher than the rest of them. Even time is, if I were to rank them, sanity, time, money for me. So for me, who wants to keep as much sanity as possible, I like lower risk properties. Hi, Matt. Good to see you. And to me, of all the properties on this page, this one, and it may not be true once I investigate into it, but this one right off the bat looks a little nicer to me, which might mean lower risk, and I'd be willing to pay more for that property. And really, the cap rate's not that much lower if it is really that nice of a property. And for that price range, that's not a bad cap rate for the more expensive price range. So like it didn't drop significantly lower. Like if you look at the property right under it, Haskins in Dayton, Ohio, that property is $89,000 with a 6.61% cap rate. Well, that's a significantly lower cap rate, albeit a much cheaper property. But to me, I would think that cheaper property would need a higher cap rate than Talisman Court, because assuming Haskins is going to be a little bit higher risk. It's cheaper. It doesn't look quite as nice. It might be, I don't know. And now that I say all this, because this is a live inventory, if you're watching a replay of this later down the road, some of these properties may not even be on here, or they may be in different placements. So as I just realized, I mapped everyone to those. So I'm speaking to the question of what do I look for in a good turnkey property. So I'm just telling you my whole thought process of if I actually start shopping for a turnkey property. So of this gigantic list of possible properties, I'm going to narrow it down. Let's say I narrow it down to looking through here, I can see 1, 2, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right off the bat, without clicking on anything, I can narrow my interests to 11 properties. So at that point, I'm going to start pulling up their information. So this one that I was talking about earlier on Walrond Avenue that I can't pronounce, I'm going to start looking at the numbers. It's $82,000, and this is if you click on the property. I can see how many stories it is, what year was it built, you know, just kind of the basics. And, you know, I can also see other pictures. Like maybe I start scrolling through pictures and I'm like, but like I'm scrolling through these and this actually looks kind of cool and kind of nice. And there's a little lofty attic thing. So I might put this on my short list. So once I kind of narrow my options down, let's say I narrow it down to like 5. Now I probably want to really think about the market. Let's say I've narrowed it down to 5 and they're all in either Kansas City, Indianapolis, or Dayton. Well, maybe my next round of filtering down is by which of those markets seem, you know, whatever, or maybe I'm just looking at the properties, like this cap rate versus whatever. Maybe I talk to a couple different sellers. Ultimately, at the end of the day, there is basically no way to have a guarantee on anything. So you could buy so I can give you an actual example. In my first chunk of turnkeys that I ever bought, I bought 2 turnkeys specifically pretty close together. Not physically, but like time-wise. Like I bought one pretty quickly and then I bought another one, I don't know, it was like 6 months later or something. The first one I bought it was cute, but it was a smaller house, had bars on the windows. It actually was a pretty cute house and it was rehabbed really nice, but it was of all the properties I own, it was probably on the sketchiest street. The home inspector had 2 prostitutes approach him when he pulled up. At one point he thought he was gonna have to pull a gun on someone who like stumbled out of the house. I don't know. It's like, it was one of the more dangerous houses, but even that, it wasn't terrible. But the one I bought after that is by far to date the nicest property I own. It was big, it was huge, it's in the nicest neighborhood, the nicest city. Everything about this property was like phenomenal. I couldn't even believe I was getting it for the deal I was getting. And so you would think between those 2 properties, you would assume the really nice one was probably going to perform better, right? Like, how was I to know? And it turned out over the first maybe, I don't even remember, 3, 4 years or something, that little rinky-dink one on the dangerous street by far outperformed the nicer one. What actually happened with the nicer one, and this was a good lesson for me to learn, I ended up writing an article in Bigger Pockets saying, I think the title was something like, is there such thing as too nice of a rental property? Because what happened, it was an interesting dynamic that I didn't plan for, was this property was so nice, but the prices around were pretty affordable. There weren't many renters in this area. Everybody down there was buying properties, and it was just far enough out of Atlanta where it wasn't, you know, at the point you lived there, you probably had a specific kind of job or something, but people were buying houses. So there was like minimal to no renter pool. And now granted, there was a property management problem on this property for a while, but regardless, it sat vacant at some point for 8 to 10 months or something. Like, we could not find a renter. It wasn't even about lowering the price. There just was no one down there renting. And so it actually taught me a lot about this factor of rentability. So anytime you're buying a rental property, whether it's turnkey or otherwise, you want to, hi Jacob, thanks for joining. You want to somehow ask the really dumb question of, how's the rentability on this thing? Because this was the nicest property I'd ever bought, and now I couldn't get renters in it. It was like this freak of nature, like, seriously? All the while, the property on the dangerous kind of more ghetto street was just rocking and rolling, like consistent income, all this kind of stuff. So as far as what makes a good turnkey property, just know that there's not a guarantee on anything. You can only do the best that you can do, and that's all you can do. With that said, you always want to think about risk. So when I think of the question, what makes for a good turnkey property? Well, where are the risks and what are those mitigations, and what property has those mitigations in place. So for example, where was that? Like if I scroll down and I see this Fairview Street property for $75,000, it actually doesn't to me look like too bad of a property. I mean, it's not what I would consider cute or super pretty by any means, and it looks like it's probably, that's definitely pre-rehab pictures because you can see the whole thing hasn't been pressure washed, anything. But my first question would be, and this isn't to say it's true, but because it's the cheapest property on this site, I would want to know why. Like, what makes it so cheap? An 8.27% cap rate is actually pretty good, but why is this property only $75,000? Is it that Anderson, Indiana is not a good good city? I don't know. What kind of neighborhood is it in? I don't know. What kind of tenants is it going to attract? So I would ask questions about that. I would naively assume, back to my apparent favorite property over here, Talisman Court in St. Louis, I would merely assume at $160,000 purchase price and the looks of the picture, it's probably in a pretty nice area. So, you know, in terms of like those two properties compared, if you think about risk, you want to think about like how nice is the property? Is it going to attract high quality tenants, or is it a low end cheap property going to attract bad tenants? That's one of the biggest risk factors for a rental property, is the quality of tenants you're going to attract. So what makes for a good turnkey property? I mean, first you kind of have to break that question out into what makes for a good turnkey property, but really that question is what makes for a good rental property, because like I said, turnkey is a method of buying, not of owning. So a rental property in general, what's gonna make it perform the best for you? Good tenants who pay continuously. Hopefully they stay long-term to minimize your turnover rates. They take care of the property to minimize maintenance and damage. You don't want a ton of eviction cost. You know, turnkey property specifically, how high quality is that rehab? Because anywhere that the rehab is slacked, you're probably going to end up paying for it on the other end with extra expenses and fixing those things. You don't want just lipstick on a pig where you're then going to have to fix everything later. So those go back into this risk versus risk mitigation. Well, risk mitigation on the rehab quality, get that property inspection. If you can, go tour the property. You don't have to, because most turnkey buyers don't, but try and go, you know, if all it takes is one trip to the property you're about to buy to kind of see it firsthand and really see the, you know, what condition is it really in. That's huge. So those are kind of turnkey specific in terms of buying something that is freshly rehabbed, is confirming the quality of that rehab, not just that paint was slathered all over, but like how, you know, is everything going to fall apart in 6 months or whatever. And then, you know, as far as what makes for a good turnkey property, you know, it's of like looking at all these properties on the site. Which of these properties is going to attract the best tenants, is going to cost you the least amount of money, and is ultimately going to perform on the long haul? Also, exit strategy. You don't want to buy in a city where the city goes completely kaput and you have nothing. This is what happened to Detroit. I don't know Detroit's exact condition right now, but back in the day, if you bought a property in Detroit and then everybody left Detroit, you have no one really left to sell it to. You have a very bad pool of renters or a very low pool of renters. That's exit strategy. Like, what are you going to do in the long run? So you want something in a stable market. And not to toot our own horns, but we really try to only offer properties in decent markets that we have reason to believe are going to perform. Hi, Lisa. I didn't see you jump in there. My thing doesn't scroll in. Glad to have you on here. So, you know, looking at all these properties, which ones are going to, here's the 3 major components to what's going to make for a good rental property and or turnkey property specifically. What property is going to bring you the best tenants? What property is going to cost you the least in repairs or like maintenance type of stuff? So what's the quality of the rehab, all that kind of, you know, what kind of supplies were you don't want the cheap paint that's going to fall off in a year. And the third component that can be turnkey specific is the property management. You know, what makes for a good turnkey property? Well, honestly, you could have a shack if you have the world's best property manager. My favorite quote, I've said it before, is I would rather have an average property with an excellent property manager than an excellent property with an average property manager. It makes a difference. So, the question comes down to which of the properties on the site or wherever you're looking for turnkeys has the best potential of those three things. Where are you going to get good tenants? What's going to have the best rehab? And how's the property management going to perform? And if those three things are intact and you have whatever risk mitigations you can in place, that's going to set you up for the best chances of having a successful turnkey rental property, because those things are what keep the money coming in. So, for anyone who just joined, the question was asked, what do you look for in a good turnkey property? What criteria does it have to meet to be worthy of a purchase? The last thing I'll tack on in kind of lieu of that second question, although it's not even a direct thing, and I started to kind of hit on this earlier, and I know I've said in an earlier broadcast, using this page as an example, for anyone who just joined, the link is up there somewhere, even though it looks like it's for an ebook. It's not. I'm looking at Hipster's inventory page, and we're using all these properties as an example to kind of discuss different points. So the last thing I'll kind of say about if I'm shopping for a turnkey property and what makes for a good one, and what did he say his other question was? What criteria does it have to meet to be worthy of a purchase? The only other criteria, as I think of that word, is I'm big at looking at, I've definitely hit all around this, but I haven't hit it directly, is the risk spectrum, the risk and reward trade-off. So if I am going to buy, let's say I'm going to, where's my favorite property? Talisman. Let me click on it. Oh, it's actually under contract right now. So now that I've completely spruced this whole property up and told you how much I love it, it's already under contract. Go figure. But probably for good reason, because this property strikes my attention quite a bit. So if I look at this property, it's one of, if not the most expensive properties on the site for sale. I would not mind a lower cap rate on that property because of how nice it is. So if I think, if this property is the most expensive, it looks like it's in the nicest area. If my risk for bad tenants and bad experiences or whatever is that much lower because of how nice it is, I'm willing to accept a lower cap rate. Ironically, in this case, the cap rate's actually not very low, which is kind of surprising, because usually the higher the price and the nicer the property, the lower the cap rate, because it's that risk versus reward. You are lowering your potential for reward, but that is justified by also lowering your risk. On the flip side to that, if I'm willing to buy a really cheap property, and maybe one that's not in the best condition, the $75,000 property actually doesn't look terrible to me compared to what they can look like at that price range. If you're buying turnkeys right now in 2019, if you're looking at anything less than about $75,000, I would be leery, because honestly, I wouldn't look at anything under $85,000 for me personally, just because I don't like that risk thing and I prefer to keep all my sanity. Jonathan, I see your question. I'll get back to it in just a second. Hi, Melanie. Good to see you. So, again, 2019, I'd be leery of anything under $85,000 just because of where prices are now. Like, that would scream red flags to me for whatever reason. But let's say I find the cheapest, sketchiest looking property on here. Here's a little box for $75,000. I would be willing to buy where was that shoebox? I would be willing to buy the little ugly shoebox for cheaper in maybe a less nice area if the cap rate is that much higher to justify it. So again, I'm willing to take on more risk if there's a potential for more reward. And with me, there's a cap to that. I'm not going to get the riskiest property on the planet, but I'm willing to take the more risky turnkey if the reward potential is that much higher to make up for the risk that I'm taking on. Versus if I get an extremely low risk property, I'm fine taking the lower cap rate because, I'm saving myself sanity, maybe losing a little money in the meantime, but Again, it's this, what's your balance between money, time, and sanity? Time is kind of taken care of on the turnkey front because that's pretty much half of why you're buying a turnkey anyways, unless if you're like me and you just don't know what you're doing and don't want to deal with it anyways. But part of the main point of turnkeys is to save you time. So time is taken care of. So now you're down to money and sanity. And in looking at any grouping of turnkeys, the cheaper you get in the sketchier neighborhoods, you're going to save on money, but you might lose a little sanity in the meantime. If you're like me and care more about your sanity, go for the higher end property. So as far as what makes for a good one, what criteria does it have to meet to be worthy of a purchase? That criteria of, does the purchase price and the risk factor justify the cap rate? What I don't want to do, and this would be a criteria that would be not met in my mind, is I'm not going to buy the riskiest turnkey property for the cheapest amount of money and it not have a very high cap rate. Like, not cool. Like, it has to have a notably higher cap rate for me to justify the higher risk. So that is a criteria for myself. Oh, I just saw one that I actually kind of like. Yeah, so let's see. So I think that actually finishes off. I thought this was a phenomenal list of questions. If you tuned in late, I had somebody reach out to me on Bigger Pockets and sent me a whole slew of turnkey questions. So I went down each one of them. So definitely go back, watch the replay. It was some good info. So Jonathan says, for your Class A that took 8 months to rent, why did it take that long? I assume you tried lowering rents, but did you drastically overestimate the rent? And was it turnkey? Yes, it was a turnkey. I would have classified it as probably an A- property. I mean, typically, and this kind of speaks to the A properties and A neighborhoods anyways, that there's likely going to be a cash flow problem. Most A's, this was back in 2000. I bought that property in 2012, so the 8 months to rent would have been 2013. At that time, you could kind of get away with buying A properties or in A neighborhoods sometimes and get cash flow. Today, you're basically not going to find cash flow in the A neighborhoods. Like, it's really not probably going to be a thing. But to that point is, if this is exactly what, I actually didn't see when you wrote this question, so I may be repeating myself, but the main reason that it took 8 months to rent it was because where it was located was in an area that we found out really has minimal number of renters. Everybody down there, like, the only reason you would live in this particular part of town, you probably had a steady job, everything was affordable, so everyone down there bought their own houses, and it left very few renters. I later connected with a new property manager. Part of this was the property manager sucked. Like, that, he was a terrible property manager, but even the new one, it took him a long time to find somebody. But when I connected with this new property manager and I told him where the property was, he said, I would have told you all day long not to buy a property there, because it's essentially, it's not just that it was too nice, but it was almost kind of too nice. Like, anyone wanting to live in that neighborhood and at that rent or whatever, they're just going to buy a property. Like, there was so little renter pool available that we couldn't find many people, and we did lower the rent. So when I bought the turnkey, it was turnkey and it was rented for, I think, $1,300 a month. And by the time we finally got a renter, she actually, knock on wood, she's been there ever since. I think we finally got her at the end of 2013, give or take, I guess would be the math. And she's been there ever since, but she's Section 8. And she got in there at $1,000 a month. So we literally had to knock $300 off of the rent, which at that time, the purchase price was so good that the returns still were really nice. And that property appreciated the fastest of any property I had because it was so nice. We did a cash out because we originally bought that with an adjustable rate private financing loan because I had just quit my job, so I didn't have W-2 ability. And that adjustable rate was about to change in 3 years. So at the 3-year mark, we refinanced it into a conventional mortgage, but it had appreciated, I think, it had appreciated by $50,000, I think, in 3 years, which was fantastic. So we did a cash out refi, got it into a conventional mortgage, and kept the cash. Like, it was me and my partner split it. It was great. But yeah, that was, so the appreciation was great. You know, there's trade-offs with everything. Like that property has been extremely successful on the appreciation side, whereas that one where the prostitutes showed up, appreciation, actually that one's kind of appreciated pretty well, but that's been a cash flow cow. So yeah, that was also too in the era of when everything was on sale and discounted and everyone and their mothers started a turnkey company. So all of my turnkeys at the time came from different turnkey providers because there were so many of them. And at that time, half the people doing it had no idea what they're doing. Nowadays, turnkey providers, most of them, the ones who are doing it now have been around for quite a while. Like they're the ones who kind of weathered the storm. They had enough business principle to kind of make it through. They weren't just like money hungry, grubbing, whatever, because it was very profitable for turnkey providers back then. So that was back in these days. So there's different factors that tied into it, but it goes back to this idea that I don't know if you heard me say earlier, I ended up writing an article saying, is there such thing as too nice of a rental property? Because it was almost basically too nice for us to find renters. It was in too nice of an area and everyone just bought their own property. So hi, Carl and Cassandra. Glad you guys joined. Carl, I feel like I have an airplane story for you and I can't think of what it is. I'll think of it and I'll message you. But yeah, so we ended up lowering the rent from $1,300 to $1,000. That was a little painful, not gonna lie. But it goes back to this idea of, and real quick, actually, that property, it's obviously one of my more memorable properties because I have stories about it for days, but that one more than any of them, when I got the turnkey, when they got the property inspection back, usually once you get, I mean, for anyone buying a turnkey, when you put it under contract and finally the property inspector goes out there, when you get the inspection report back, you're going to think you are getting completely shammed. Like, it's going to be this long, lengthy thing that's going to make it look like no one's ever rehabbed this property. That's just how it goes. It's normal. It's fine. I think we've talked about how to go through that process appropriately and what does all that kind of stuff mean. But this property in particular, it literally had 3 things wrong with it, and that was it. Like, it was like the shortest, most clean. I mean, this was like the nicest property I had ever bought. And it ended up having, I almost want to say it was 10 months of vacancy. It was ridiculous, but it was just kind of like a head scratcher because you're sitting back and you're like, but I did everything right. Like I got the nice property, you know, it should attract high-end tenant, you know, like I looked at all these things and I thought I was doing really good. But the one thing I didn't look at or know to look at the time was rentability. Like I said, a property manager later on said, yeah, I could have told you not to buy there because everybody in those neighborhoods, they're just going to buy a property. Why would they rent? Yeah, so that was a little bit of a crazy one, but turnkeys are fun. And, you know, kind of to finish off this idea of, you know, what makes for a good turnkey property, what criteria, you can analyze all day long and you're always going to have learning experiences. Like I said, I thought that property would fit all the check marks or tick boxes or whatever, and it caused me some headaches. And then this one that I thought was kind of risky and whatever turned out to be a great performer. Like, since I started buying turnkeys in 2011, I've always had learning experiences. Like, I've learned a ton now. Like, it's a learning experience. So, you know, to kind of, it's actually 6 o'clock now, so we'll kind of wrap up on this note. But it's, you know, people quite often, I would say more than one of the biggest things I hear of people hesitating to buy is that they're afraid something's not going to work out, or you know, a lot of people are worried about the quality of the property and manager, like, oh, but what if they, you know, do this or don't do that or whatever. Like, so fire them and hire a new one. You know, it's a learning curve, and you have to be gentle on yourself because you're not going to know everything right ahead of time. You know, part of starting this group is hopefully me and other people who have been down that road can share our experiences, so it's less that you have to learn on your own. That's my whole intention with all of this. Because if I've already experienced something I learned from, why not just tell it to you so you can not have to go through it yourself. But it is going to be a learning experience. There's always going to be something that comes up. And some people I know have bought turnkeys or any rental properties for that matter, and it's just been flawless. And mine haven't even been flawless. I'm like, how do they do that? It's the luck of the draw. The best you can do is the best you can do. So, you know, when you're scrolling through turnkey properties, like I always say, like, you can't guarantee anything. So you might as well go for the property you like the best. you know, maybe again, that's the girl coming out in me, but you know, if you verify all of the other things and the numbers pan out, the neighborhood seems legit, the market's legit, and that whittles you down to 5 of them, pick your favorite one. Like, you know, this should be a fun experience. Like, yes, it's for the investing. Yes, it's to do something good with your money. But at the end of the day, if you're not having fun doing this or you're losing sleep, don't do it. Like, I always say that no investment, no matter how good the returns are worth you losing sleep. End of story. I don't care if you find something that's literally tripling your money overnight. If you're losing sleep over it, it's not worth it. But then that goes back to my prioritizing sanity as my most important currency. So on the note of sanity as a currency, I'm going to leave you guys for this week. We will be back, as far as I know, we'll be back next Monday, the usual time, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard, I can never say that fast, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hopefully by then, this darkness, it's literally never been so dark in here doing one of these. So I don't know, unless you're in one of the states that doesn't have daylight savings time like California does, rock on, but I'm ready to go to bed and it's 6 o'clock. So cool. Maybe next week we'll be more adjusted for this, but happy time change. Hope everyone had a good Halloween, good weekend. Keep your turnkey questions coming. You don't just have to ask them in the lives on Mondays, but I hope to see you guys back here on Monday. I love talking to you guys. I love answering your questions. Keep the posts coming. And like I said, we're trying to figure out the logistics of why the website's not really showing the proper images when I put a link in. So like last Thursday's property showed up as a blank picture, but click it anyways, it goes there. But working on that kind of stuff. So yeah, and if at any point you guys think of anything that you think would be helpful, anything, you know, specific types of information I could be offering you, any ideas for anything, I'm open. So let me know. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you next Monday and in the group over the course of the week, and invite your friends too. All right, see you guys.